The war had raged for 3 centuries, and the galaxy itself was dying from the endless conflict. The Vex Dominion was a monstrous force that annihilated everything in its path, unstoppable and merciless. They came from the dark edges of space in ships shaped like colossal black spears, wielding weapons capable of shattering entire planets. Every civilization that resisted them was erased within months, reduced to ashes and fading memories. Commander Zara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching her fleet crumble before her eyes. She was from the world of Sirius, whose people had fought the Vex for over 50 years. Yet nothing they had done had made any difference. The defense of Kepler 442 was the last hope of the coalition of free worlds. And if this planet fell, billions across the core systems would die within weeks. Her 4 eyes swept over the tactical displays, seeing 3 more ships erupt in blinding bursts of fire and light. The Vex dreadnoughts were enormous, bristling with weapons, their shields enduring impacts that would obliterate 10 ordinary ships. Lieutenant Kale stepped beside her, his crystalline body glinting in the red emergency lights that bathed the bridge. He was her second in command and had fought beside her through every battle of the past 5 years. She trusted him more than anyone else alive. His voice was steady, though she heard the strain beneath it as he reported the loss of another cruiser and the failing defensive grid. Zara asked how long until reinforcements would arrive, and Kale checked his display, answering that it would be at least 6 hours, though they would not last even 2 at this rate. Another explosion rocked the ship, throwing several crew members to the floor. Zara gripped her command chair to stay upright. On the main screen, the CSV Defender tore apart as Vex plasma fire sliced through its hull, killing all 300 souls aboard in seconds. And there was nothing anyone could do. Rage burned in Zara's chest, but she forced it down. Anger would not win this fight. She needed clarity if any of them were to survive. Then something impossible occurred. Every sensor on the bridge screamed warnings at once. The navigation officer shouted that a massive spatial distortion was forming behind the Vex fleet, with energy readings beyond measurable limits. Zara turned toward the view screen just as space itself began to rip open, like torn fabric under invisible blades. A rift yawned across the void. Not a wormhole, not a jump point, but something utterly alien and painful to behold. Impossible colors swirled at its edges, lightning crackling across its surface. And then ships began to emerge. Zara stared in disbelief as thousands poured out in perfect formation, more and more, an endless tide of metal and might. They came in all sizes, from nimble destroyers to carriers so vast they dwarfed even the largest Vex dreadnoughts. And every one of those ships was painted in shades of gray and blue, with white identification numbers gleaming across their hulls. The sensor officer's voice trembled as he reported that over 12,000 capital ships had been detected, and that was only the vanguard. More continued to emerge from the rift. Zara stared at the tactical display in stunned disbelief, trying to comprehend who these newcomers were and from where they had come. The entire coalition fleet barely numbered 3,000 vessels, yet this unknown armada had 4 times that number in their opening wave alone. The mysterious fleet neither slowed nor signaled. Instead, it surged forward toward the Vex formation like an avalanche of unstoppable power. Then they opened fire, and the void ignited with weapons unlike anything Zara had ever witnessed. Railguns hurled solid projectiles so fast they pierced Vex shields as if they didn't exist. Missiles launched in swarms of hundreds, weaving through defensive fire with impossible precision. Gigantic energy beams, wider than buildings, sliced through dreadnought armor as though it were paper. Fighter squadrons poured from carriers in clouds so dense they resembled living storms of metal. The Vex tried to respond, but their efforts collapsed under the furious onslaught. One of their colossal super dreadnoughts pivoted to engage, charging its primary cannon, a weapon powerful enough to obliterate a small moon in a single strike. The beam erupted in a torrent of pure energy, and everyone aboard Zara's bridge froze, breath held. One of the mysterious battleships absorbed the hit directly. Its shields flared with a blinding blue radiance and held. The ship didn't even slow. In the next instant, It unleashed every weapon in its arsenal, and the Vex super dreadnought shattered into 3 burning fragments. Kale whispered that it was impossible, yet Zara knew it wasn't. It was happening right before their eyes. The Vex Dominion, the same force that had crushed every opponent for 300 years, was being annihilated in mere minutes. Their ships broke formation, attempting to flee, but the newcomers were faster. They intercepted every escape route and hunted them down without mercy. 17 minutes after the first shot was fired, the battle was over. The once invincible Vex fleet was gone. Silence settled over the bridge of the Celestial Dawn. No one spoke as they watched the view screen in disbelief. The unknown Armada repositioned itself into a defensive perimeter around Kepler 442, but made no hostile move toward the Coalition ships. They simply waited. Zara's thoughts raced. Were these strangers saviors or another kind of enemy? A transmission crackled through on the standard Coalition frequency. The voice that followed spoke in Galactic Common, but the accent was strange, unfamiliar. The speaker introduced himself as Fleet Admiral Jacob Martinez of the United Earth Space Navy. He apologized for arriving late and said they had been searching for the Coalition for a long time. Zara's heart pounded as realization struck. Everything had just changed. The war that had ravaged the stars for 3 centuries might finally be ending. The names Earth and Humanity appeared nowhere in any Coalition archive. No one knew where these beings had come from or what their true intentions were. Yet one truth was undeniable to everyone who had witnessed the battle. Humanity had just saved them all, and the Vex Dominion would never recover. On Kepler 442, the Coalition Command Center was in chaos. Dozens of voices shouted over one another as representatives from 20 different species debated what to do about the colossal fleet now orbiting their world. Were these humans liberators or conquerors in disguise? Holographic projections filled the chamber, showing the human ships arrayed in flawless formation. Their sheer number and symmetry were enough to make even the bravest warriors feel small. High Counselor Dexron raised his branch-like arms high, his ancient wooden body creaking as his voice cut through the noise. A Verdanian elder over 4 centuries old, he had survived more wars than anyone present. He commanded silence and spoke with slow, deliberate gravity. They must tread carefully and learn who these humans truly were before taking their next step. Any decisions? Commander Zara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tense silence, and said the only thing that mattered was clear: humanity had saved them from certain annihilation. Without their intervention, the Vex would have shattered the defenses and slaughtered everyone on Kepler 442 within hours. But Ambassador Crix clicked his insectoid mandibles uneasily and reminded the room that they had charted every known inhabited system across the galaxy, yet not a single record existed of a world called Earth or a species known as humans. Lieutenant Kale spoke softly, almost to himself, suggesting that perhaps these humans were not from this galaxy at all. The thought froze every conversation in the chamber. If they had come from beyond the stars of their own galaxy, then their technology was far beyond anything the Coalition had ever conceived. That realization made them either the greatest allies imaginable or the most dangerous threat in existence. Moments later, a message arrived. The human admiral requested a direct meeting with Coalition leadership. The decision was unanimous. A delegation was assembled immediately, including Commander Zara, Counselor Thexran, and several high-ranking officials. Together they gathered in the Grand Diplomatic Hall to await their guests. Everyone tried to project calm, but Zara could sense the unease radiating from the others, the fear of the unknown. When the humans finally entered, the room fell into an uneasy hush. They looked ordinary. Not monstrous, not alien, just strangely familiar. They walked upright on 2 legs with 2 arms and a single head. Their height was unremarkable. Their skin was soft, lacking natural armor or scales, and their forward-facing eyes gave them the look of born predators. Yet what struck Zara most was what lay behind those eyes: resolve and quiet confidence born from battles that should never have been won. Admiral Jacob Martinez stood at the forefront, a sturdy man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Beside him was Captain Lisa Chen, his science officer, and Commander Ryan Blake, his security chief. Their crisp blue uniforms bore strange symbols and insignias meaningless to the Coalition, yet clearly marks of honor and rank among their kind. Counselor Thexron spoke first, offering heartfelt thanks for their intervention and acknowledging that millions owed their lives to humanity's arrival. Admiral Martinez inclined his head and replied that he was glad they had come in time, but wished it had been sooner. They had been tracking the Vex Dominion's movements for more than a year. Zara, unable to contain her curiosity, asked the question burning in everyone's mind. Where had humanity come from, and why had no trace of them ever been detected before? Captain Chen stepped forward and activated a holographic display. A spiral galaxy shimmered into existence above the table, but it was not their own. She explained that humanity came from the Milky Way, a completely separate galaxy located 2.5 million light-years away. The entire room fell silent. Intergalactic travel had always been a theoretical impossibility. No known civilization had ever achieved it. The energy requirements alone defied reason. Someone finally asked how they had managed such a feat. Admiral Martinez's expression grew somber, his tone heavy. He explained that 20 years earlier, Earth had discovered an ancient device buried deep beneath the ice of Europa, one of their system's moons. No one knew who had built it or for what purpose, but when activated, it had opened a stable rift between galaxies. Humanity sent exploration missions, scientists, and research teams through the gateway, and what they found changed everything. Through the rift, because they were eager to encounter other intelligent life. Martinez paused then, his jaw tightening before he spoke again. What they found on the other side was the Vex Dominion, and the Vex immediately detected the human probes and traced them back to the rift. Soon after, the Vex invaded. They poured through the gateway in overwhelming force and struck the human solar system with everything they had. Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies all came under siege, and billions perished in the first month alone. Captain Chen took over, explaining that the Vex had expected an effortless conquest. What they hadn't anticipated was what humanity could become when fighting for survival. Humanity retreated, regrouped, and began dismantling every piece of Vex technology they managed to salvage from destroyed enemy vessels. For 15 years, they waged a relentless, grinding war across their own system, studying, adapting, and evolving faster than the Vex could comprehend. Their ships grew stronger, their weapons deadlier, and their tactics unpredictable. Commander Blake added in a low voice that humanity had finally won their war 5 years ago, driving the Vex back through the rift and sealing it behind them. Zara asked why they had come here if their own home was already safe. Martinez met her gaze and answered simply, "They came because they knew what the Vex truly were, and what they had done to countless civilizations. After closing the first rift, humanity had spent 5 years constructing another, one under their complete control. Then they came to this galaxy not to conquer, but to finish what the Vex had started." Martinez looked around the chamber, his expression calm but unshakably certain, and declared that they had come to end the war once and for all. Counselor, Thexron's wooden branches quivered as he reminded the Admiral that the Vex controlled half the galaxy, 10,000 star systems and armies numbering in the trillions. How could anyone hope to defeat such a vast force? Martinez replied that they knew precisely how large the Vex Empire was, and they intended to reclaim every single world the Vex had taken. The confidence in his voice wasn't arrogance. It was the hard certainty of those who had already fought this enemy and survived. Humanity, he said, does not make promises it cannot keep, and we will not stop until every Vex stronghold is destroyed and every enslaved world is free. The meeting concluded soon after. Coalition delegates clustered in small groups, whispering about what they had just heard. Zara stood silently among them, realizing that the galaxy had changed forever. These humans were either going to save them all or die trying. Either way, the Vex Dominion was about to face an enemy that understood them better than anyone ever had. Humanity had already survived everything the Vex could unleash and returned stronger. Within weeks, humanity kept its word. Massive fleets launched coordinated strikes across 12 sectors simultaneously. The Vex had never faced an opponent capable of such vast synchronization, and their command structure faltered as every move they made was anticipated and countered. Humanity had spent 15 years studying the Vex, learning how they thought, how they fought, and how to dismantle their strategies before they formed. Commander Zara was soon assigned as liaison officer aboard Admiral Martinez's flagship, the UEE's Enterprise, a colossal carrier unlike anything she had ever seen. Working alongside the humans changed her understanding of warfare entirely. Their technology was astonishing, their shields and weapons far beyond anything the Coalition could build, but that wasn't what made them terrifying. What made humans truly dangerous was how they thought about war, about survival itself. One day, while reviewing tactical data in the war room, Captain Chen explained it to Zara. She said that humans had been fighting for their existence since the dawn of their evolution. They were persistence hunters, creatures who never stopped, never gave up, no matter how grim the odds. Humans didn't know how to quit, and that made them the most terrifying opponents imaginable. Zara watched as human strategists plotted operations with cold precision and mathematical certainty. They calculated firing solutions that accounted for variables most species never even considered and anticipated enemy movements 3 or 4 steps ahead. Their fleet coordination was beyond comprehension. Commanders directed operations across dozens of light years with split-second accuracy, and every ship captain executed their role flawlessly, without hesitation. Lieutenant Kyle Murphy, a tactical officer, once explained the key difference between how the Vex thought and how humans thought. The Vex believe in conquest through overwhelming force, he said, but humans believe in survival through adaptation and determination. That difference in mindset means we find solutions the Vex can't even imagine. Murphy's words were proven true during the Battle of the Helix Nebula. The Vex had fortified the nebula into one of their strongest bastions, bristling with warships, defense platforms, and minefields dense enough to tear entire fleets apart. Every Coalition analyst declared the system impregnable. Any attack would end in disaster. Admiral Martinez studied the enemy defenses for exactly 47 minutes before ordering the assault. The human fleet didn't charge in as the Vex expected. Instead, they advanced from 16 different approach vectors, each battle group arriving at a precisely timed interval. Stealth destroyers infiltrated the outer perimeter first, silently dismantling sensor arrays before the Vex even realized they were under attack. Electronic warfare vessels jammed every communication channel, throwing the enemy into chaos. Then the main fleet struck with overwhelming precision. From the bridge of the Enterprise, Zara watched the battle unfold like a flawless dance of destruction. Every ship moved in perfect sync, every strike coordinated with ruthless timing. The Vex formations crumbled under the relentless assault. When they attempted to retreat, they discovered human squadrons already waiting at every exit, sealing their fate. 4 hours after the battle began, the Helix Nebula was secure. The Vex defenses, decades in the making, were reduced to debris. Zara asked Admiral Martinez how they had managed the impossible. He smiled wearily and said it came down to practice, years of it. The Vex, he explained, had taught humanity everything they needed to know about war. Humanity had simply survived long enough to learn every lesson. Months passed, and the pattern repeated again and again. Human fleets pushed deeper into Vex territory, liberating world after world and freeing civilizations that had suffered for generations. Their victories ignited hope across the Coalition, and for the first time in centuries, the Vex were losing ground. Inspired by humanity's example, Coalition fleets began launching coordinated offensives of their own. But amid the triumph, Zara began to notice something the humans rarely spoke of, and it unsettled her deeply. She saw the exhaustion etched into their faces, the quiet heaviness in their eyes. These people had been at war for over 2 decades. They had lost families, homes, entire cities. Every human aboard the Enterprise carried the invisible weight of those memories, the scars of what the Vex had done to them. Invasion of their home galaxy, and those wounds had never truly healed. One night, Zara found Captain Chen standing alone on the observation deck, gazing silently into the stars. She approached and asked if Chen ever thought about going home, back to Earth. Chen remained quiet for a long moment before she finally answered. Her voice was soft, but her resolve unshakable. She said that every human in the fleet thought of home every single day, but none of them could return until their mission was complete. Chen explained that if they left the Vex Empire intact, the enemy would eventually find another path to the Milky Way and launch a second invasion. This war, she said, was not only about helping the Coalition, it was about protecting Earth, ensuring that no human child would ever have to fight this same enemy again. The Vex had to be utterly destroyed, their capacity for war erased completely, or humanity would never be safe. Zara understood then that the humans hadn't come merely to rescue the Coalition. They had come to eliminate an existential threat that could never be allowed to rise again. Humanity would not stop until every Vex fortress was shattered and every occupied world liberated. Anything less would mean condemning future generations to face the same nightmare. The Vex themselves began to realize what humanity already knew, and what the Coalition was only beginning to learn. Humans did not wage wars as other species did, with shifting fronts and negotiated truces. They fought to end wars completely and permanently. They studied their enemies until they understood them better than the enemies understood themselves. And then they exploited every weakness with cold precision and without mercy. Human tactics had been forged in 15 brutal years of war within their own solar system. Every battle had taught them something new, and every defeat had sharpened their will. The Vex had unknowingly created their own destroyer by invading Earth, giving humanity a reason to become the most dangerous military power either galaxy had ever witnessed. Now, the rest of the galaxy was beginning to understand what the Vex had learned too late. When humanity decided to end a war, they did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They ended it completely and made sure it could never begin again. For 3 centuries, the Vex Dominion had terrorized countless civilizations. But that reign of terror was nearing its end, because humanity had arrived, and they were experts at finishing what others started. The Vex homeworld, Exatera, was the most heavily fortified planet in the galaxy. Situated deep in the galactic core, it was encircled by 3 massive rings of orbital defense platforms, each capable of vaporizing a capital ship with a single strike. Its surface bristled with bases, shield arrays, and planetary cannons able to target ships in high orbit with deadly precision. 4 entire battle fleets guarded the system at all times, never leaving their posts. For 300 years, the Coalition had tried to breach Exatera's defenses, and every assault had ended in disaster. Entire armadas had been annihilated, attempting to break through even the outer ring. Thousands of ruined ships drifted in the void around the planet, silent monuments to failed invasions. The Vex believed their world unconquerable. That arrogance had sustained them for centuries. But now, at the edge of the Exatera system, the combined might of humanity and the Coalition had gathered. Nearly 20,000 warships, representing every free species in the galaxy, stood assembled in the largest armada ever recorded. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, for everyone knew what awaited them: the bloodiest battle of the war. Admiral Martinez stood in the Enterprise's war room, studying holographic projections of every layer of Vex defenses. Around him gathered human officers, Coalition admirals, and representatives from dozens of allied worlds, all waiting for his judgment. Martinez spoke quietly, his tone steady. He said this was the final stronghold. If they took this world, the war would be over. Counselor Thexran, who had accompanied the fleet, looked uneasy, his wooden branches drooping in distress. He reported that Coalition analysts predicted losses of 40%, even in victory, and asked if such a price could be paid. Martinez turned to face them all. He didn't try to offer false comfort. He admitted this would be the hardest battle any of them had ever fought. The Vex knew they were finished and would unleash everything they had left. He paused, letting the weight of that truth settle across the room. Then, with a faint, grim smile, he added something that caught everyone by over the next hour. Martinez outlined the attack plan in meticulous detail. And Zara listened in growing disbelief at the audacity and precision of what the humans had devised. This would not be a simple frontal assault against fortified defenses. What humanity intended was far more devastating, an operation that depended on flawless coordination and perfect timing across multiple fleets. The attack began exactly at 0600 hours Galactic Standard. The first wave consisted of thousands of unmanned drones surging toward the outer defense ring in massive numbers. The Vex orbital platforms opened fire instantly, obliterating the drones by the hundreds. To outside observers, it looked wasteful, almost suicidal, a meaningless sacrifice. But every destroyed drone released vast clouds of electronic countermeasures and sensor chaff. Within 20 minutes, the outer system was engulfed in electromagnetic interference so dense that the Vex could no longer distinguish real ships from decoys. Their gunners fired blindly at ghosts, while the true strike force moved unseen into position. Human stealth vessels had been drifting silently in the system for weeks, engines cold, power systems dormant. They had waited patiently for this exact moment. Now they came alive. Their weapons, singularity bombs engineered specifically to annihilate fortified structures, armed and deployed. Each device created a microscopic black hole lasting only seconds, but its gravitational force tore apart everything within 1,000 kilometers. Detonations rippled through the outer ring, and vast sections of Vex fortifications simply vanished. Orbital platforms, weapons stations, entire sectors were pulled apart and crushed in moments. Before the Vex could recover, the main human fleet arrived at full combat velocity. Zara commanded a coalition battle group and led her ships through the shattered gap in the defenses. Space erupted in plasma fire and energy beams as the Vex scrambled to fight back, but human electronic warfare overwhelmed them. Vex targeting arrays glitched, their communications jammed, and isolated ships fought alone, cut off and confused. The second defensive ring endured longer, but humanity unleashed planet cracker missiles, massive warheads originally designed to shatter asteroids threatening Earth. Against Vex orbital stations, they were brutally effective, tearing through shields and armor as if through paper. The third ring lasted only a few hours before collapsing completely under the relentless assault. By the time the Allied fleet reached Exatara itself, the orbital defenses were nothing but wreckage. Yet the Vex ground armies remained, billions of soldiers prepared to die defending their homeworld. Admiral Martinez transmitted a message across all frequencies, ensuring every Vex commander heard his words. He gave them 1 hour to surrender. After that, humanity would begin orbital bombardment. Every base, factory, and weapons facility would be destroyed. He told them plainly, the war was over, and any further resistance would bring only death. For a moment, silence filled the channels. Then the Vex High Command replied, the same council that had ruled through terror for 3 centuries. A cold voice declared they would never surrender and would fight until the last Vex had fallen. Martinez cut the transmission mid-sentence and turned to his weapons officer. His order was simple, fire. 20,000 ships opened fire simultaneously. Kinetic slugs traveling at relativistic speeds slammed into military bases and command centers. Precision missiles obliterated shield generators and weapons factories with meter-perfect accuracy. Energy lances carved through fortifications and detonated ammunition reserves. The bombardment was devastating but also controlled. Humanity's targeting systems ensured only military objectives were struck. Civilian zones, hospitals, and essential infrastructure were spared. The message was unmistakable. Humanity could erase the planet if they chose, but they wouldn't. They showed mercy to an enemy that had shown none. After 6 relentless hours of bombardment, a new transmission arrived. This voice was different, quieter, broken, and full of defeat. The Vex military command formally surrendered. The war that had raged for 300 years ended with 2 simple words: we yield. At last, the galaxy could breathe again. In the 6 months following the fall of Exatara, remaining Vex forces across the stars laid down their arms. Without leadership, without hope, their resistance collapsed swiftly. One by one, occupied worlds were liberated. Prisoners long thought forgotten were freed. The galaxy began the slow work of healing. Commander Zara stood within what had once been the Vex High Command Center, now transformed into a temporary coalition headquarters. Through vast windows, she watched human transport ships landing in steady streams, offloading food, medicine, and reconstruction supplies. The humans understood that victory in war was only the beginning. They were not conquerors who destroyed and departed. They were rebuilders who stayed to mend what battle had broken. Captain Chen joined her at the window, gazing out over the busy scene below. She said it was remarkable how much had changed in just 6 months. This planet, once the heart of an empire, built. He smiled and said, "We came here to end a war. Now we get to build something better." 2 galaxies working together could achieve things neither could alone. The possibilities are endless, if we're willing to try. The treaty signing was held in the rebuilt Grand Hall of Exatara, beneath a ceiling of crystal and light. Leaders from across the stars arrived in their finest ceremonial attire. Dozens of languages filled the air as delegates exchanged greetings, their voices carrying a cautious but unmistakable optimism. No one knew what the future held, but everyone agreed it had to be better than 300 years of darkness. Counselor Thexran gave the opening address, his ancient voice resonating with the strength of 4 centuries. "Today," he said, "marks the end of the longest war our galaxy has ever known. But more importantly, it marks the beginning of something new, a future built on cooperation, on peace, and on shared prosperity for all." He gestured toward the human delegation. "We owe humanity a debt we can never truly repay. They crossed the endless void between galaxies not to conquer, but to help. They showed us what it means to fight for freedom, justice, and the right of every being to live without fear." Admiral Martinez then stepped forward. His words were simple but carried the full weight of everything humanity had endured. "We came here scarred by our own war with the Vex," he said. "We did not come seeking revenge, but to end the cycle of destruction forever. What we found here were allies, people who shared our resolve, our hope, and our refusal to surrender." He looked across the sea of faces, coalition leaders, Vex citizens, human officers, and continued, "Humanity does not seek to rule, but to stand beside you. Everything we have, our knowledge, our technology, our experience, will be shared freely with any who wish it. Our strength lies not in dominance, but in cooperation between equals." With that, the treaty was signed. Every delegate pledged to mutual defense, open trade, and the founding of a new intergalactic council, one that would oversee relations between the Milky Way and what humans called the Andromeda Galaxy. The great rift between them would remain open, not as a weapon but as a bridge of friendship, allowing people and ideas to flow freely in both directions. As the ceremony ended, Zara stood beside Lieutenant Kyle Murphy. She asked him what came next now that the fighting was finally done. Murphy smiled and said, Now we build things instead of blowing them up. We explore instead of fighting. We learn instead of killing." He laughed softly and added, "Honestly, I'm looking forward to being bored for a while." Zara laughed with him. After years of endless war, boredom sounded like paradise. Outside, the sun was setting over Exatara, painting the sky in deep golds and crimson light. The same sun that had once shone on the capital of a brutal empire now illuminated a world at peace. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy's future looked bright. The Vex didn't know one critical fact. Humanity wasn't planning to fight fair.